So he placed his double agent at the top of the refereeing system because that man has even come to testify saying Barca was the only one who paid me.
Of course, he wasn't paid by the federation, it was Barca.
It's easy to place a double agent at the top of the refereeing system. Of course.
Exactly.
One thing, no executive of Football Club Barcelona in the last 20 years has earned what Negreira has earned. Only first-team players have earned more money than Negreira. So for someone to say that he didn't earn a lot of money, well, there is no executive at Football Club Barcelona who has earned as much money in the last 25 years as what Negreira was paid. Football players, yes, but executives, no. Well, what I'm asking is simply that you look at what I just showed you. This is 3 years of new facts, new information. Lift the suspension and move the case forward as the regulations require.
Of course. Could that be done already for this upcoming season? I mean, keeping Barcelona out of UEFA competition beyond any other sanction that might go further.
UEFA could do that tomorrow. Or in 2 months.
Juan Luis Martín de Pozuelo, I've said your name more lately than even Negreira, even Laporta, even Real Madrid. Just think about that. And we've really been wanting to talk to you so you can tell us how things are right now, since there are a lot of people waiting to hear. How are you, my friend?
Well, I'm fine. I also hear myself too much, and I'm not really used to hearing myself so much. I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but I'll get used to it.
No, it's just that, look, you've been brave, but not just brave. I would almost put how hardworking you are above being brave. It's incredible how the day has 24 hours for everyone else, but for you, I think it must have more because you do so many things in a day. And all I want is for you to rest well and be at peace. But now, joking aside, the work you're doing is fantastic. And I wanted to ask you, for those who don't know the context, which I think everyone does, at least everyone who follows this channel, there was an unexplored path in the Barcelona Negreira case. You already know that there's an administrative disciplinary process which had expired or was made to expire. Then there's the criminal one, which is currently in the investigation phase of the case through criminal proceedings. And we'll see if the case goes to trial, which we believe it will be. And then there's another one, which is the ethical route, because Juan Luis Martín de Pozuelo, along with Ricardo Ramos Neira and others collaborating with him, considered that it was very strange that the Spanish Football Federation hadn't taken any action, that UEFA didn't know anything, and that FIFA just looked the other way. It's just that, like the Federation, they didn't see what Barca had done as anything serious from an ethical point of view, which is incredible, and they've tried to shake things up there to see what happens by filing a complaint with the Spanish Football Federation. We've discussed this on the channel. So where do things stand? What did they say to you? How did the Federation address the complaint? What's going on now with UEFA? That's interesting.
Well, the first thing was that we identified this way to analyze the behavior of FC Barcelona and Jose Maria Enriquez Negreira. We found that beyond that branch of administrative public law, the third leg of the chair had been hidden, which would be ethics, which are the private rules that are set between the clubs, the federation, UEFA, and FIFA. Had that third way been hidden? We explored that third way. No one had reported it. Well, about 2 weeks ago, we filed a complaint with the Spanish Football Federation. After 7 days, the Federation replied to us in a somewhat cryptic way, and they closed the case, saying that this matter was in the courts and that therefore, from the Federation's point of view, they did not intend to take any action regarding this situation. In this case, they didn't give me an answer by hiding behind the public branch of law, but rather said that they weren't doing anything because the matter was in the courts. And automatically, when we got that response, we were already prepared. The next step was to do the same thing. That same complaint we had made to the Federation, we sent to UEFA, along with all the documents and the response that the Federation had given us. And at the same time, we reported to UEFA the Federation's inaction and complicity in the reported acts. The reported incidents of sports corruption from an ethical point of view.
Of course, what's hard to understand is if in criminal proceedings, both the Spanish Football Federation and the league, and yesterday we saw him, the other day we saw Laporta there hugging Tebas, Tebas hugging Laporta, and vice versa, which is incredible, right? Because you have to maintain certain appearances. What's unbelievable is that the federation, which is part of the prosecution, that is, this means that the federation considers Barca guilty of the crime of sports corruption. And what about the presidents who paid Negreira? Look, the main figures, the accused witnesses, arrive at the trial and either they don't ask questions or they ask a ridiculous question, or like in this case, well, I don't know. Let's say it doesn't cause them any ethical objection and you say, hey, this isn't normal. That's one of the things you're pointing out to UEFA, right?
It's not normal. It's not normal. When you're the victim of a crime, you can join the case as a prosecuting party. You're a victim, right? If you're not a victim, you can't join the case as a prosecuting party.
Of course.
The federation considers itself a victim of what the presidents of Barcelona and Enrique Negreira did. At the same time, when you are a victim, aside from what is strictly the world of football, you ethically consider that the person who did something against you behaved badly and you reject them. And in this case, that personal rejection, so to speak, is handled between the parties, between those who were part of the federation, the clubs, and so on. They have their own rules by which they are governed. It's already clear that in that situation you feel like a victim, that they've gone against you. As a federation, you have appeared in court and you accuse the former football presidents and a former member of your federation, who is Enrique Negreira. The least you could do is activate your internal protocols to determine responsibilities, regardless of the criminal proceedings. In criminal proceedings, there are no sanctions like relegation or stripping of titles. The judge can't decide that because the criminal code doesn't address those issues. But those are precisely the issues that are addressed in the internal regulations between clubs, the federation, UEFA, and FIFA. And for a long time, they made us believe that it was somehow time-barred, hiding behind the shield of the Public Administrative Statute of Limitations. So look, instead of saying no, I think that the federation could say no. For me, there hasn't been any crime. And since there hasn't been any crime, there's no unethical behavior from anyone either. That would be consistent. But the moment you take that qualitative leap and position yourself as a private prosecutor and victim, what's the least you can do? Which is to activate that process. And not only that, to inform your bosses, who are UEFA and FIFA, and explain what happened. And that's precisely what they haven't done. They haven't told UEFA what happened.
It's incredible. Well, neither to UEFA nor to FIFA. So what did UEFA say to you? Apparently, they replied to you very quickly. They want more documentation and seem very willing to cooperate, right? Who knows, right?
UEFA has a submission portal where you upload documents as you present them, which then opens and identifies a specific case file. What surprised us, because this process is the same for UEFA and the Federation, is that they have an online submission portal where your identity is verified and you submit your documents. While the Federation took about 8 days to respond, UEFA replied within a few hours. They replied, opened a communication channel, and we asked them how we could submit those documents because they are very large in size and some are audiovisual, which makes them difficult to submit. They provided us with a link and we are in direct contact finishing the submission. Everything has already been initially submitted. We are going to add a little more documentation, and well, UEFA has the case open. We can't know much more, but they have it open. With all the documentation provided, which is basically copies of what is in the judicial proceedings.
Of course. UEFA doesn't close that case opened in the spring of 23, but rather suspends it. From a legal point of view, how do you say it? They suspended it because in reality, they put it on hold to see how the judicial process would progress.
The suspension holds the statute of limitations and stays in effect, awaiting new information. But of course, that was in 2023. In 2023, the judicial proceedings began. There was nothing before. Since 2023, there has been a report from the National Police, reports from the Civil Guard, Negreira's burofaxes have surfaced, the tax inspection has come up, and everyone has testified in court. Of course, there's a body of evidence, a lot of proof that's come out from everywhere, from under every rock, and the surprise, according to the news that's been leaked, is that UEFA told Real Madrid that they weren't aware of any of this. It's like the Federation was hiding the contents of the judicial case from UEFA. Of course, in 2023, UEFA only had a couple of press reports and not much else. But of course, if now they suddenly receive 600 pages with copies of everything there is of what the civil guard, the police, and I don't know who else have done, I suppose UEFA's perception of the truth and the facts that took place will be very different from what it was in 2023 when they suspended the procedure.
Thank you. We're going to show all of that now, where we're going to post it so people can check it out. We're going to explain it right now. But I have this next question for you, Juan Luis. And I think that should have been enough for UEFA already and for FIFA too. The fact that a club like Barcelona, paid the second in command of the referees 8.4 million over 2 decades. For me, that should already be enough for UEFA not to have invited Barca. In fact, I always say the same thing on the channel. If this hadn't been allowed to expire through public channels, through administrative means, through public law, Barca would have been relegated. As Teba said, they would have been relegated and UEFA wouldn't have invited Barca. But the facts are the same. I actually find it a bit inconsistent on UEFA's part, you know? We're trying to shake things up, but you have these facts and they tell you, but under Spanish law, under Spain's sports law, this has expired. But you have those facts and you say, if it hadn't expired for UEFA, it wouldn't have expired and Barca would have been relegated. You wouldn't have invited them to the next Champions League or the one after that or the one after that. Wow, why didn't UEFA get involved there? That's what I don't understand.
But we take things for granted.
Let's see.
In this conclusion you make, Miguel Serrano, you take things for granted. You assume that UEFA knew there were payments, that they knew certain things in 2023. If you rewind to 2023, what really happened in 2023 was that there was a lot of media buzz about what had happened. It was even said that the judge had closed the case because it was possibly a case of money laundering or mismanagement and that it had nothing to do with sports corruption. There was a kind of media noise that created confusion about the real facts that were being investigated. And we don't know. We take a lot of things for granted. We don't know what actually makes it into UEFA's case file. Media buzz is one thing, what we see is another, and what gets to the inspector's desk is different. If it doesn't reach the inspector's desk, he goes out to find it himself. Sometimes things have to come to you. We take things for granted that aren't true. Like in the criminal case. There are things in the criminal case that we all see, but these statements have been made. Other statements, no, statements from Gaspar, statements from Perrin, statements from Godal, all these things that we knew. This didn't make it into the case until last fall, when Real Madrid pointed it out. So those things that seem so obvious to us don't make it into the proceedings, whether it's the criminal case or this one from UEFA, until the evidence is submitted.
Okay.
So this one thing is media opinion, another is public opinion, and another thing entirely are legal files. They are closed boxes, and until you put the papers inside, nothing comes together. I suspect that.
Of course, although in the media, people give their opinions about what appears there, but is this in the case file? Is this in the administrative record? Is this in the data gathering phase, which is the investigation phase of a criminal case? Well, maybe not. The statements from Gaspar, from Perrin, from all of them, we knew about them, but they were not submitted to the judge until a few months ago. You might have convinced me there. And especially because there's a very clear issue here. Beyond the payments, the fact that there were such strong reports from the civil guard, which are never taken into account. When on Partidazo de Copé, El Larguero, and so on, they talk about the issue and so on, they don't talk about the civil guard's reports or Judge Aguirre's rulings. And I remember that in his own handwriting, he said there was systemic corruption in the refereeing establishment. What documents? We're going to share them with the people. We're going to say where we're going to share them. I'm going to open this little window now where Juan Luis will tell us everything we have here. Juan Luis, folks, this isn't what they're going to see where we're going to share it. I'll put that up later, but the titles, of course. What are we sharing so that people can check it out? And then most importantly, this documentation, which you already have, if I'm not mistaken.
What we're going to share is what UEFA has, along with the path it took. The complaint we filed on April 2nd, there's a first date there that says 2/4/26. That's the entry record of the complaint to the Ethics Committee of the Spanish Football Federation. Then later we have to file complaint number 2, which is from April 11th. It's right there below. That's the response I gave to the Federation when they told me the case was closed. And above you can see 14/4/26. Last week, the submission to UEFA's Ethics Committee of what has been reported. And finally, there's another file labeled Organic Law on Data Protection, numbered. Those are the ones there. Those are all the documents that have been submitted to UEFA and are documents that are part of the judicial process. The documents that we believe, that I suspect the Spanish Football Federation has been hiding from UEFA for 3 years, and that overwhelmingly proved the unethical conduct of FC Barcelona and Jose Maria Enrique Negreira with the referees. There are reports from the Civil Guard, reports from the National Police, the Tax Inspectorate, formal notices from Negreira, and court orders that indicate what has been investigated and the existence of these facts. Documents I submitted to the prosecutor's office included extensive audiovisual content now added to the case. And then all the court recordings with the statements of the vice presidents and of Luis Enrique Valverde, Laporta, and Gaspar. Everything that has been part of the judicial investigation with statements that have been made from September until now.
This, which is documentation, well, we've already seen it here. It's pages and pages and more pages and pages. It's something that, and you and I have talked about it several times, and I think it's one of our short-term goals. It's that also let it be known, let the international media know, because I think outside very little is said about this. Barca seems to have paid, but it's not clear why they did it. I mean, here you have all this documentation. And how? In the major Spanish sports media and in the non-sports outlets too. Us and Marca and, of course, Mundo Deportivo and Sport haven't even created a single exclusive section about the Barcelona Negreira case. And then they don't pay much attention to this because, and this is part of another aspect of this topic. They're not interested because it would do a lot of harm to Spanish football. It's like, yeah, but where is justice? No, but the thing is that Barca is very important in this country from a sports perspective, and Barcelona and Catalonia, I mean, from a political perspective, and that's why they don't want to let Barca fall. That's the explanation I find, because the media sobre estos informes, Civil Guard and so on, they haven't really dug deeper, especially to explain it, right? I mean, the public doesn't know about it, not even in Spain, maybe a bit more, but outside, not a chance.
Well, no, honestly not, but we're going to try to make people aware of it, and we're going to translate all of this into English and French so we can spread the word.
Exactly, because I insist, there are people, well, anyway, you must be putting up with all sorts of things, right? All kinds of things, really. Look, today, I mean, but even people, well, this is part of it. At other times, death threats, things like that. But well, anyway, some nutcase with a lot of free time is at home. Some jerk who maybe writes you a few things and I don't pay any attention to it. But yes, on that level, you want to hurt. I mean, you're going against, no, excuse me. This is just the Civil Guard, a process, the investigation of a criminal case, a case through criminal proceedings. These are data and facts, and they're there. It's just a matter of making them known to the people who need to know. UEFA and FIFA not knowing about this isn't normal, since the Spanish Football Federation didn't do its job.
That's the most serious thing.
Of course.
That's the most blatant thing of all. That the Federation is involved in the criminal case, which practically its role has been virtually non-existent. It hasn't provided any evidence, contributed, or asked questions to witnesses or those under investigation, since it wasn't allowed, only to the witnesses. It could have, and it hasn't done anything, nor has it communicated any of this to its supervising body, which is UEFA.
Exactly. Well, we're going to share all of this via a link that I'll put in the description. And I'm going to overlay it later in the editing of this video so people know where it will be, and anyone who wants to check it can find it there. What has UEFA told you? Just that, a lot of documentation received and so on, but are there any deadlines here? I mean, is all this information being provided just to add to the file?
We're currently providing information as we just submitted it on the 14th. I think that was last Wednesday, but I'm not sure. Well, they just received it. They must be processing it. I mean, I have this information processed after months of work to see what each thing is and to understand it. They might even ask me some questions about what I've submitted, but the case is still in its early stages. The matter is very preliminary, so it's too soon to know exactly where it will lead.
All right.
To FIFA? Will it lead to reopening the case, to lifting the suspension? Logically, they should lift the suspension. Well, the complaint. I'm asking them to lift the suspension and to apply interim measures right away, of course. What they should do is, in light of new facts or knowledge of facts, lift the suspension to assess what action to take.
Lifting the suspension, explain it to me in legal terms. On the 23rd,
UEFA agreed to the suspension after Laporta went to have lunch with the Slovenian, another event that is reported as an unethical act. You can't go to UEFA's headquarters to somehow lobby and say, hey, don't sanction me or suspend my case. It doesn't work like that in the legal world, but they did it. So I reminded him, I said, hey, I don't think this is right. I don't know how you'll evaluate it as UEFA, but I'm reminding you. This man gets in his car and shows up at his house to tell him, don't suspend me, don't sanction me. And then the case was suspended. No? Pues lo que pido es simplemente que... Look at what I just gave you. This is 3 years of new facts, new information. Lift the suspension and move the case forward as the regulations require.
of course, that could be done already for this upcoming season. Not inviting to UEFA beyond another sanction that could lead to more consequences.
UEFA could do that tomorrow. Or in 2 months.
And do you think there's a possibility that Barca won't be invited to the next Champions League beyond not allowing them to sign players in transfer windows? Because I think UEFA can't do much more than that.
The possibility definitely exists. The possibility, I mean, it's one of the possible options that UEFA has according to the rules when making a decision.
Claro.
That's a possibility to resolve it one way or another, but it's still just a possibility.
Okay, and I have 2 more questions related to that, if that's all right.
It's practically the same process. Inform FIFA that we've been in contact with the Federation, but the Federation hasn't paid attention to us. I will forward all the documents, the same ones that UEFA is aware of, and now you're asking FIFA to take action. Each one has its own area of responsibility, UEFA. UEFA would handle European competitions, while FIFA would have competitions like the Club World Cup or its own tournaments. Or I think that FIFA even has more authority to force the Spanish Football Federation to act. These are details I haven't commented on yet because honestly, it won't depend much on me. I mean, on what they decide afterwards. There's little or nothing I can do. I'm not an affected party. I'm the complainant, but I'm not an affected party.
Of course. Do you think, even though you haven't gotten involved yet and you're already doing a lot, Juan Luis, do you think FIFA can do it? Come on, I believe it. It's always been said they can strip titles and relegate them.
If you want me to tell you the truth, Miguel, I mean, I haven't really tried to get to the bottom of the matter or to see how I present it. What's not in my hands. I haven't really analyzed what actions they could take. It's just not up to me. My expertise isn't going to influence that one way or another because it's a personal decision. I'm not going to be able to participate or make a judgment or write anything. No, what I want is to leave everything very clear so that even a 5-year-old child can understand it. You'll understand it now, and once you've understood it, you'll know what you have to do. Yeah,
Claro.
independent. But I know this has been talked about a lot, Colin. It's been discussed a lot on your channel. I haven't gone into detail and I don't want to get ahead of myself by making a statement. I do know that based on my experience with the Juve case, they left them out and didn't let them participate, or other clubs too. The UEFA sanction is pretty straightforward. They just don't let you participate in European competitions. It's a sanction I know firsthand because I've seen it compared to other cases, but FIFA sanctions are a bit more unfamiliar to me.
What you're doing is walking a path that no one has walked before in the name of justice. Because it's unbelievable that a club paid for more than 2 decades under 4 different presidents to a vice president of the referees. And nothing has happened here. It's unbelievable from an ethical point of view. Hey, and the federation just looking the other way as all this unfolds. And beyond that, you won't know what either organization can do. And this is just my own opinion, what I understand. And regarding the Calciopoli thing, hey, FIFA told the Italian Federation, you relegate this team, but what is this? And they did it. I mean, if FIFA can't relegate or strip a title, who can do it? I understand it has to be FIFA, just a note.
When Juventus was sanctioned, Juventus accepted the sanction. They didn't appeal.
Of course, because
you don't dare, and Juventus and go through the ordinary courts to appeal a sanction like UEFA's. UEFA has its own court, which is the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Lausanne. If you didn't want something, you go to that court, like clubs always do, to get out of line. Starting a war against UEFA or FIFA is very dangerous because they can remove you from their competitions. Sanctions do exist, in fact. De hecho, Real Madrid with the Super League thing, and they played it. Hizo eso. They took a risk. UEFA had rules that prevented the creation of the Super League. Madrid said, these rules go against fundamental rights like the freedom of association to create a competition, and they go against antitrust rules. And they went to that external jurisdiction to seek protection because a fundamental right was being violated, and there were rules of that private law that clashed with anti-monopoly laws. That's what Madrid did. To create a competition.
Of course.
And Madrid won. Of course, Madrid won. And then Madrid sat at the same table to negotiate with UEFA. How are we going to do it from now on? Because I won the trial against you.
Of course.
Do you think that Juventus, when they were sanctioned for what they had done and there was clear evidence and then they were criminally convicted, would they dare to go to a regular trial claiming they didn't do it just to win? If you go to a regular trial to say that you didn't do it, you have to be very sure that you didn't do it or that you're right.
Of course.
So if Barcelona is allowed to compete in Europe, I would like to see them actually go to court and claim that the sanction is unfair.
No, right? Which brings me to my last point, or to say no, it's just that we paid for reports. I mean, to tell UEFA or FIFA the same thing that Laporta told the judge, which is even more serious because the judge isn't stupid, right? I understand. Because that whole thing about, no, they were reports from the Sun, excuse me. But if the Sun just said he's been doing them since 2014, then from 2014 back to 2001, or from 2001 to 2014, what were they? No, yes, there were some reports, but they got lost behind a cabinet. No, at the back of a cabinet. He said those were the ones he was able to recover, and the others were verbal. And why? They billed him for aloe vera and for European championships and World Cups that hadn't even happened. I think they have everything to lose. Now, moving on to the criminal issue, briefly, how do you think that's going? Because the other day, Estrada Fernandez, I want you to clear this up for me, because Estrada Fernandez shared something on X. At first, I thought it was from the judge. In fact, it kind of looked like it was handwritten by the judge. It's from Real Madrid's legal department, right?
I made a comment about that document on X, the document itself, the text. What it basically says is a request to move into abbreviated proceedings, which is the equivalent of someone asking for the investigation to end so they can move on to the order opening the trial and the trial itself. That little piece, since it's not dated, we don't even know where. Real Madrid had just presented it, which basically meant that the investigation proceedings were considered finished and that Real Madrid believed they had enough to press charges. I later interpreted that, since it's still unknown whether that document was actually submitted last week or not, the document basically said they were interested or thought it was already sufficient. Everything was proven to proceed to the abbreviated procedure phase, which comes before the order opening the trial. The rest is left for the trial. If it hasn't happened yet, it won't take long to arrive. That document is the one that's about to come from Real Madrid and from the prosecution, stating that they already have enough. Since the prosecution hasn't requested more evidence and all requested evidence has been presented, there's nothing left to do. The last request for evidence comes from Bartomeo's defense, who has asked for the testimony of Gerard Lopez. We don't know if it has been accepted, but aside from that request, right now, the judge has nothing left to do. At any moment, she can close the investigation and then we move on to the charges and the order opening the trial phase.
In December, you told me it was the last one. In December, you told me. With what's going on with the Attorney General, with what we're seeing happening in Spain, with what we're seeing about Laporta, as a witness who would have been charged if the crime of sports corruption had been included in the penal code earlier, Laporta would also be charged. He has always sold it as a judicial victory. No, it's just a matter of timing. With what you had said, what you told me, there's at least an 85% chance or more that Barca will be convicted. Do you still think the same? Has the percentage gone up?
In December, Laporta hadn't testified. Now Laporta has testified. So add 2% more. Okay, but it doesn't change anything.
Okay, it's just so obvious. It was like a whole parade. Negreira's son. What Russello said, what Bartomeu said, what Porta said, the defense of Barca and of the presidents. The two defendants and the other two witnesses who represent themselves are involved. With what they say, they end up contradicting what the others say as well. It's something that's more than obvious, at least to us. Well, Juan Luis, that's all there is to say. That documentation will be uploaded at the link I'll put here in the video description. And so people know, so that if they want to check it,
they can see it and draw their own conclusions. The 600 pages are very entertaining to read.
The truth is that lawyers are amazing. I mean, lawyers say, no, read 600 pages. You guys, man.
Man, check. Another check, man. Look at what this executive says, man. What the other executive says. Honestly, it's getting entertaining. Then you see the legal notice. There's the crazy thing he said. There's the other crazy thing he said. The way the judge tears into you right from the start, saying there's bad faith, abuse of rights. Man, you have to read it a bit, but you start to see. The story, besides, is chronological. It's like reading a novel. I know it's law, but it's still a story. It's something. I don't read all that. It's very boring. If I read about a tax crime or I don't know what to read, like Barcelona has been paying referees for 17 years. Is that entertaining?
Yeah, I wasn't going to say years. Well, we already thought about it years ago before the scandal had even broken out. It's a whole soap opera, but it's more important for those who want to look it up. Fantastic. Let them read it at UEFA. Let them read it at FIFA. And then if it's passed on to the media, including international ones, let them read it and publish it. And let people find out through, there are also people outside, because many times inside the channel, Macho, I talk, and a lot of people in Hispanoamérica me dicen, many of my friends don't know about Negreira. When I ask if they're Barca fans and mention him, they're clueless. They just claim Madrid has paid referees and bought the referees. Do you know who has done it with documented evidence? It's one thing to have your fantasies, but with documented evidence, he's the one who did it.
It's just bar talk, like always. I mean, always. You know, the referee this, the referee that. But I don't think it ever really crossed anyone's mind. When this came to light and they said, hey, there's a club involved, it's like, what if it had been our club?
Of course, well, that's what Adria Soldevilla was looking for when they investigated this. That's what they were looking for.
But I just couldn't believe it. I mean, you might find some kind of fix in a match, but having someone on the payroll, of course, it's like having a double agent. It's like having a Soviet agent in the White House. If Barcelona had a guy planted right at the heart, right in the center of referee assignments, pulling the strings, moving things around, of all the referees in Spain. There's something I always say that I find really funny. Well, actually, it's not funny, but it's something I always mention. It's just that there aren't any cases involving referees. And I've explained this. I mean, no, but the referees are actually victims.
Of course. No referees are charged? No.
Of course not. What's being pursued is a citizen-led prosecution because the referee is the victim. Because that referee, as I already told you, they manipulated my professional career.
Of course.
Of course, they manipulated my professional career. They probably wondered, why did they put this guy in that match and that guy in the other one? Because that one is the referee. That one favors the home team for the Barca match when Barca are at home. That one for away matches. I assign him to an away game because I know what kind of referee he is based on the same statistics that the president of the technical committee of referees might have. I mean, you could play with that small advantage or not, or maybe a bigger one depending on how competitive it was, by placing this referee here or intimidating the referee, so that this decision, this call on the field, would be heavily penalized and the opposite error wouldn't be penalized. We've explained it many times. So he placed his double agent at the top of the refereeing system. Because besides that man, I was only paid by Barca.
Of course, he wasn't paid by the federation.
It was easy to place a double agent at the top of the refereeing system.
Of course.
Exactly. One thing. No FC Barcelona executive in the last 20 years has earned what Negreira has earned. Only first-team players have made more money than Negreira. For someone to say he didn't make a lot of money, well, there isn't a single Barcelona executive who has made as much money in the last 25 years as much as Negreira was paid. Football players, yes, but not executives.
Or when they say things like, you're not going to find a referee who received money, an envelope with money. No, it's that they paid the right boss. There's no need. The referee already knew what he was paid for, to referee, but the people at the top knew, or he
either exploited his fear or could end his professional career.
Like the referee said the other day, it's about knowing how to be present. His career could end his refereeing career at its peak, but Lima, I think that's his last name, used to say that refereeing was done by looking at the offices. But yes, thank you.
Like a newspaper's editorial guidelines, if you go off script, you might lose your job.
Exactly. And what if that newspaper editor is being paid by a government or a company?
Or a team of
football, of course. The writers know what line they have to follow. It's easy to understand. If someone doesn't get it, either they lack the brains or just don't want to understand. It's clear. Juan Luis, sending you a big hug. Thank you so much for all the hard work you're doing. We all hope to help you out however we can. And that's it. We'll keep reporting on it.
A hug to you too, Miguel. And we'll keep at it because there's still work to do. And let's see if somehow we get the effect we're looking for.
I think so. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel. Leave a comment. Share this. And that's it. See you in the next one. Bye.